Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and in this video I'm going to show you just how easy it is to make a rich, savory, gourmet soup. Lobster bisque. Now we don't have lobster a whole lot here in the Serious Keto household, it's just not in the budget. But we do probably have it 2 or 3 times a year, generally something like Valentine's Day or New Year's Eve. And this year, on New Year's Eve, when I was at Costco, I saw that they had baby lobster tails, 6 of them, for $50, which I felt I could splurge on. So we cooked up all 6 of them on New Year's Eve. We ate 4 of them, and then saved 2, and then saved the shells for the bisque. Now that's the super duper cool thing about making lobster bisque. One of the 2 primary ingredients in this is something you typically throw away, the lobster shells. Instead, once you have lobster, put those tails into a Ziploc bag, throw them into the freezer. The freezing not only lets you store the lobster tails longer, it also aids when you're trying to bust them up in the first step of making our soup. Additionally, if you have some extra lobster meat handy, you can use that in this recipe when it comes time to actually plate and serve the bisque, but it is completely optional. The important thing is the shells. I'm going to open the corner of the Ziploc bag for my lobster shells so that when I pound them, there's a place for the air to go. After I've broken this into some smaller bits, we'll add it to our Instant Pot, along with 2 cups or 475 ml of heavy whipping cream. Just drizzle that over the top. Next, some dry white wine, either Pinot Grigio or Sauvignon Blanc. You don't have to break the bank on this. This bottle from Costco, $5. I'm going to pour this into the same measuring cup. That way I can collect a little bit more of that residual whipping cream and pour that in. Next, I have about a half a cup of sliced yellow onion. That's 4 ounces or about 110 grams. A sprig of fresh tarragon. If you use dry, I would recommend probably 15 to 20 leaves worth. Then 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. I've got 1 tablespoon here, and I'm going to show you a little flavor hack. For the other tablespoon, I'm using this Taste No. 5 Umami tomato paste, which I'll link to down in the description. And we'll add about a tablespoon of that as well. Then cayenne, a pinch or just a light little dusting on top. Transfer the pot into the Instant Pot, secure the lid, and set to pressure cook for 45 minutes on high. If you don't have an Instant Pot, you can also make this in a regular pressure cooker. I recommend going to 15 psi for the same 45 minutes. In either case, whether you use an Instant Pot or a pressure cooker, you're going to want to do a natural pressure release. That should take about 20 minutes. After about 20 minutes, the natural release is complete. And you can see that this just sort of looks like a hot mess. I'll stir it together to incorporate the tomato paste into the broth. And then, using a pair of tongs, I'm going to pull out as much of the onion and lobster and tarragon as I can. This will make straining it a lot easier in a moment. As you can see, I got pretty much all the big stuff. Then I've got a fine mesh strainer and I think this is a 2-quart saucepan. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to dump this through the strainer. There's still a few large chunks in here, which is not a huge deal, but it will take a little bit more time for the liquid to all strain out the more debris you've got in there. You may need to sort of tilt it and rotate it to get every last drop. Then I'll put this on the stovetop where I want to reduce this by about 1/3 over medium heat. This will take about 20 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm going to take my 2 baby lobster tails from the other night, pop them into my Anova Precision oven, and my goal here is to just keep them warm. So I'm going to set this to sous vide 125 degrees. Now you can see that there's starting to be this layer of fat or oil that is separated from my soup. That's okay, we're going to incorporate that in a moment. But first, a little taste test. very buttery, very rich. I'm going to add a little bit of red wine vinegar to kind of cut that just a little bit and give it a little more brightness. Next, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of red wine vinegar. You could use white wine vinegar or champagne vinegar if you want. Stir this in. And another taste test. A generous 3-finger pinch of sea salt, and then some xanthan gum. This will both thicken up our soup and emulsify that fat. I'm going to sprinkle 1/4 teaspoon on top, and then use an immersion blender to emulsify all that fat back into the soup. Oops. Looking very nice and creamy right now. Now you may notice that I used perfected xanthan gum. The difference between perfected xanthan gum and just regular xanthan gum is perfected mixes a lot more easily. In fact, I probably could have used just a whisk to mix the perfected xanthan gum in there. If you're using regular xanthan gum, I highly recommend using either an immersion blender or transferring the bisque to a regular blender, get it whirring up, and then add your xanthan gum. This will help keep any of that xanthan gum from clumping up. Now it's time to plate our bisque. I'm going to take my 2 little baby lobster tails here and coarsely chop them up. I want it a little smaller than bite size. And then I will divide them between 2 bowls. I'm trying to mound it up a little bit in the center just to make it aesthetically pleasing, and doing my best to keep it equal between the 2 bowls. I'm going to pop the 2 bowls back in the Innova to warm them up. This is a little kitchen trick that helps keep your food warm as you're eating it. And after a few minutes, I'm going to pull them out and add the bisque. I calculated the serving size to be about 2/3 of a cup or 150 ml. It may look like I'm adding more than that, but these are fairly small, fairly shallow bowls, and this ladle is not as big as it looks. If 2/3 of a cup doesn't seem like enough to you, let me just say, this is a very rich, borderline decadent soup, and it should be served as a side dish, not as a main dish. So 2/3 of a cup will be plenty. And now, off to the table, it's time to eat.
Richness. Yes, good job, dear. Thanks. It's good. Thumper wants some too.
So I'm going to add a little bit of pepper. Fresh chives also would be great on this, but we don't have any fresh chives. My mouth is watering so much. Just the smell of this is so good. That is so rich and buttery and just full of umami. Oh, yum. Winner. Calculating the macros on this was a little bit tricky because I don't really know how to subtract out the ingredients that I put in once the soup was done cooking. I don't know how many carbs the onion imparted, so I put them all in there. So I probably overestimated the carb count at 8 net grams or 9 total grams per serving. And while that is a little bit on the high side for keto, the vast majority of those carbs comes from the heavy whipping cream. Also, this is sort of a special treat, special occasion sort of recipe, not an eat every day recipe. As always, I will include a link to the printable recipe with all of the macros down in the description below, as well as links to any of the products that I may have used. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. If you're not a subscriber already, tap that subscribe button, then hit the bell to turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my videos. And if you really enjoyed this video, click that thanks button. Buy me a cup of coffee. Or if enough of you do it, some more lobster. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.